I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. Nice to see you all here. Thank you for showing up. Anyone here for the first time? Those who are here for the first time, what brings you here? Anyone who wants to share now that your hands are already up?
My friend Kristen talked about how amazing it is, and I needed to connect with you after many years.
Yes, she must love you very much to send you here. What else? Welcome. Who's here for the first time and why? Yeah?
I was here, I was coming for a while, but then I went to San Francisco for an extended period, and then I went to Illinois to visit my daughter. And it's kind of cold there right now, so I came back here.
Yes. It's a good reason to be here.
Yes.
Yeah. That's how we ended up here in 1979, and apparently haven't left. So, well, welcome back. Glad you're here. What else? First time? Somewhere, hand over here.
I read about the Four Noble Truths, and that made sense to me, so I want to learn more.
What about it made sense to you?
Just the like everything is suffering, and then the impermanence of things, and then how you can expect permanent happiness from impermanent things.
Yeah. You really don't need to learn anything else. There's really no need for you to be here. Yeah, but everything is suffering. Doesn't that sound so depressing?
I mean, yes, but when I look more into it, I learned that it's not just like suffering, but there's like emptiness and a lot of things that the word dukkha means. So that definitely makes sense to me as well.
I love new people. It's the best. Isn't it exciting to like come across something that's just like, you're just like, wow.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I talk about this a lot, but just to point out now, just to clarify, the idea behind everything is suffering, kind of try to pull that back a little bit and realize that we experience suffering, dukkha, right? But instead of suffering, try to look at dukkha as discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction, because this blanket statement for anybody else who might be new of everything is suffering. You know, I had a friend who, said like 25 years ago, he opened up a book, page 1 said life is suffering. He's like, well, that sucks. Closed the book and never went back to Buddhist teachings until like 25 years later, where he realized there's a page 2, that there's a way out of this discomfort and angst. But not all of life sucks is my point, right? We will experience suffering a lot throughout our lives. And if you've shown up here on a Tuesday at 7 o'clock, by now you've pretty much figured that out, that you're going to experience a lot of suffering in your life. But not all of it sucks. And so the practice is to figure out how to suffer a little bit less so you can be a little more pleasant and joyful, with everything else that's going on. Well, welcome. Yeah. What else? Anyone else here for the first time? There were more hands. Now y'all got shy. Yeah.
I'm a therapist in training, so I'm here to learn a little bit. I mean, your work influences a lot of what we're taught in schools, especially dialectical behavior therapy. So
Yes.
I'm here to understand the root a little bit more.
Yeah, the coolest thing about that, you sent an email, yeah?
I did not, but maybe I should.
Oh, no, someone was a therapist, needed to come here and observe it for something else. But the funny thing about dialectical behavior therapy is when we moved into this location 8 years ago, Dharma Bum Temple's never had a sign, but Dharma Bum Temple, Dialectical Behavior Therapy. And the church that was here before us, they had this big sign out front, kind of traditional church type sign, and there were all these white letters on it and everything. And someone asked us if we were going to have a sign here at the temple. We're like, well, we never had a sign downtown for 10 years, so why would we have a sign here? And then we started pulling off all the letters, and Maggie and I looked at each other, and we were just kind of left with like a couple, like a D and a T, and then we found a B. And so we put like these tiny little DBT letters up there. And then for the first like month we were here, people thought we were a dialectical behavioral therapy place. So we took those down also. We just left the cross up just to clarify everything here. We've been good ever since. So well, welcome. Glad you're here. You're surrounded by therapists and people in therapy, so you'll feel right at home. All right, so we'll start with meditation practice. For those who are new, a couple things to tell you before we begin. And to those joining virtually, glad you're here. Thanks for showing up. Feel free as you are to say hello in the chat box or something on your screen. Before we begin, a couple things. Nothing's going to happen to you. Right? You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. I mean, you don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, often it helps slide into the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. If you're on a bench or chair, however you're seated, just trying to sit up straight. Posture's relaxed, but breaking your normal routine of kind of kicking back and relaxing. Just sit up comfortably. Resting the hands on the knees or lap. If you need to move, simply move. Movement doesn't make you a bad meditator. It just means you need to move. And if you are brand new, you're not going to empty your thoughts. You're not going to think nothing. You're not going to go blank. Your mind will race. I'll say things periodically to either wake you up because you've fallen asleep or remind you that you're lost in thought and bring you back to present moment. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Lost in thought. Return to breath. letting go of expectations, letting go of judgments from the practice, just sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, wanting nothing but to sit and breathe. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do, nowhere else to go, and no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move, and most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how you sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samutpata, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than anyone else in this room, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's it. That's what we get. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to every other 20-minute period of your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, meditation doesn't fix that. It helps you become aware of your life that's a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, so you can actually make changes in your life. But it's a practice. It's not easy. It's not a quick fix. It's not a 6-week course. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, becoming aware of everything you think, everything you say, and everything you do in each moment. And looking at the intention behind all of your thoughts, all of your words, and all of your actions. The Buddha called this karma. Karma literally just means action. It's not what goes around comes around. It's not people getting what they deserve. Karma is what we bring into the world, not what we get. What we bring into the world is with our thoughts, our words, and our actions. So the heart of this practice is becoming mindful and aware of our thoughts, our words, and actions throughout every moment of our entire lives. And that's a practice. It's very different from what most of us have been doing the majority of our lives. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, hoping they do this, hoping they do that, wishing they would do this, wishing they would do that. We spend so much time trying to control, manipulate, and change and fix everybody outside of ourselves. This practice is about taking care of us, yourself, and setting the rest of that down for a brief period. So you can learn to cultivate some loving kindness, compassion towards yourself, some forgiveness towards yourself, some gentleness towards yourself, so you can then go into the world from that place. Not anger and hatred and greed, but generosity, compassion, and wisdom. That's what this practice is. Super simple in theory and incredibly difficult to practice. But with that, I'll pause. For me, always just prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhism, anything that's on your mind. And for those who are joining virtually, again, welcome. Glad you're here. Feel free to say hello. If you have a question, you can put it on your chat box, and I'll do my best to respond. So we'll open up to questions and use the rest of our time for that. Yeah.
Question about just a general question about the figures on the tapestry. I know there's no God in Buddhism, like Buddha was not a god, just a person.
Right.
Are these people, like, were they real people or are they
Right.
deities somehow?
Right. What's up with these people? Yeah, great question. So let me start by saying this. Well, I'm going to repeat something you said, just for those virtually didn't hear it. Your question is around the iconography, the images. Specifically, I think you're talking about the tankas, but really just all the images in Buddhism. And again, for those virtually didn't hear it, what you said was, you know, the Buddha's not a god, he was just a person. So who are all, what are these? Are these deities? What are they? So let me start with this. Years ago, I used to wonder that same thing. Like, who is Avalokiteshvara or Kuan Yin, right? This the large one in the middle here behind me, and I'll come back to her in a minute. Is she real? Was she a god, a goddess? Was she a deity? Where did she live? You know, who did she hang out with? What time? All that kind of stuff. I was really fascinated by all that a long time ago. And eventually completely dropped that fascination because never was going to get much of an answer. And ultimately realized that it didn't matter. Somebody years ago said to me, it doesn't matter if the Buddha himself never lived. If it was all one big made-up story, it's a great story. And there's a lot of lessons to be learned, right? If the Buddha said it, if Donald Duck said it, if it's good and healthy, then beautiful, right? But coming back to your question specifically, there, for the most part, actually not even all of them looking it up here, but there's what's called bodhisattvas. Bodhisattvas are enlightened. Bodhi is enlightened, sattva is being. So these are enlightened beings. And the question is, in a lot of the sutras, they reference these bodhisattvas. And again, I just dropped the questioning of like, do they exist or not? I tend to look at them in practice form as emanation bodies of the Buddha himself, but not literal like manifestations of the Buddha, more of just aspects and representations of Buddhist teachings. So to highlight a couple of them, starting this second tanka here, the dude with the sword right up front here, his name is Manju Shri. He's the same bodhisattva that's sitting here on the lion, right? The sword in the Tibetan version is considered the sword of wisdom. So the second noble truth, the first noble truth, what's our new friend's name? What's your name?
Max.
Max. As Max pointed out, life sucks, right? That's the first thing. Life is filled with suffering. The second thing is the cause, the second noble truth. What's the cause of our suffering? The cause is greed, anger, and ignorance. And so we use generosity to cut through greed. We use wisdom to cut through the ignorance, and we use compassion to cut through the anger. And so this is the sword of wisdom. This is what we use to cut through that ignorance, that anger that's in our mind. We cut through it. And it's sharp, right? You ever done something really dumb? Yeah, and had somebody point out to you, you did something really dumb, and you didn't want to hear it, but you needed to hear it, right? And it's kind of harsh. This is the wisdom bodhisattva. This just cuts through. Sometimes a little gentle hug and pat in the back is not enough for us to learn. We have to cut through the ignorance, right? And so that's the wisdom. In this version, the story up here, which is more of a Taiwanese style, it's like being in a cage with a crazy lion. Anyone in here been in a cage with a crazy lion? Someday somebody's going to say, yes, I have, but I still like to ask just in case. So if you're in this cage with a crazy lion, it's kind of scary. And that lion is like dangerous. Well, what's it like being in your head all day long? Right? It's kind of like being in the cage with a crazy lion. So the idea with this practice, again, of wisdom, the practice of wisdom is to turn that crazy lion in the cage into a playful little kitty cat that you can just hang out with. And that's the representation here. So you have two different cultures, Tibetan version, Nepalese version, Taiwanese version, right? Chinese version, showing the same bodhisattva differently, representing wisdom. You get to the second one there. That's called a four-armed Chenrezig. Behind me is Kuan Yin, the one in the middle. In the back corner there is a 1,000-armed Avalokiteshvara. In Japanese, they say Kanon. Vietnamese, they'd say Quan. But all different languages describe her differently. She is the embodiment of compassion. Her name literally, as you've heard me say, means hear of the world's cries. So she hears all the suffering in the world and then pours out compassion to heal. And as you see just in these three versions, different representations of this Bodhisattva, Kuan Yin or Avalokiteshvara. I point out those two first to say that the Buddhist teachings, the two wings they talk about in Buddhism, are the practice of wisdom and compassion. So after initially trying to figure out, like, are they real or not? I'm like, I don't care. You know, but if you can find out exactly who they are and what they had for lunch every day, let me know. You know? And then they're endless from here, right? But there are, to kind of add to that, the two front ones, this is Amitabha Buddha. So this was actually another Buddha. There's Shakyamuni, right? Siddhartha Buddha, the prince who became the Buddha. And then you have Amitabha Buddha. Amitabha Buddha in Pure Land Buddhism is an actual Buddha that with the practice of meditation, precepts, and reciting the Buddha's name, when you die, you can actually be reborn into the Buddhist Pure Land, where there is no suffering. Right? Very, kind of sounds very much like this Western view of heaven, right? This is the medicine Buddha. So medicine Buddha, there are people that, we got to understand to put in a context, especially for those who are new, right? Most people don't come into Buddhism in the year 2025 in America because they're looking for religion. They come in because they're stressed out, they're angry, they're sad, they're pissed off, they're depressed, they just want to be happier. They're running from whatever religion because they think that was the problem. Ultimately, you come into Buddhism and you realize the religion ain't the problem, you're the problem, right? And so what Buddhism helps us understand is that it's not about this religious practice. The Buddha himself, as you said, wasn't a god. It's a philosophy and a way of life. But to millions of Buddhists all over the world for 2,500 years, it is a faith, religious practice. And they very much have faith and belief in being reborn into Amitabha's Pure Land. And they very much believe in the medicine Buddha that if you're ill, if you're sick, when you die, to be reborn in a healthy rebirth, you would pray to the medicine Buddha. So average Western folks showing up here, not interested in that. As I said Saturday, how many of you here showed up today because you want to make sure you have a good rebirth? No. You're just trying to get through your shit. You know? So, yeah. Always happy to not answer your question at all. What else? Yeah.
You always talk about, and I'm going to butcher the word, Pratitya Samapata.
You actually nailed it.
Did I?
I mean, the way I say it, which is butchering it also. So,
dependent origination. What the hell
what does that mean?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so the question for those who didn't hear it is Pratitya. At the end of every meditation, I say Pratitya Samapata, dependent origination, the basis of the Buddha's awakening. Dependent origination, to sum up very simply, but understand that the Buddha's awakening, what he awakened on was this realization of dependent origination. Now I say that just to set the tone, kind of level set things here that says, don't expect to really embrace all of this, right? I mean, I'm nowhere even close to this. But in theory, it's understanding that everything is contingent upon something else for its existence. Everything is contingent upon something else for its existence. You ever get mad at someone? Yeah, right? We can go back to probably noon today, and I'm being generous with you, right? You can go back to noon today, last time you got mad at somebody. When you were mad at them, did you think anything about their life? Where they came from? How they were harmed? Who, caused their trauma? Who put them through hell? Or were you just pissed off because you didn't get your burger the right way? You're not thinking about them, right? Do you know who Emanuel Swedenborg is? No. He started the Swedenborgian congregation in the 1700s that then came together in the 20s in San Diego and built this church in 1927. Without Emanuel Swedenborg's existence, we're sitting on a pile of dirt right now. So we come here and we just sit down and we think, cool chair. Do you know who Robert Frank is? No. Dude bought those chairs like 14 years ago when we were at the downtown Dharma Bum Temple because we had really uncomfortable chairs and he wanted a comfortable chair but didn't want to be selfish and buy one for just him. So he bought them for everybody and now we got and then he said, well, how many do you have a Buddha for you? So that's where all these chairs came from. But what do we come in and do? We just come in and sit down. Dependent origination is understanding the causal relationship of all phenomena, meaning everything is contingent upon something else for its existence. But how do we apply this to our lives to make our life better? Next time you're angry at somebody, realize they got a whole bunch of stuff going on that you know nothing about. But you're wrapped up in what? Your ego. You. What you didn't get, what you wanted, what you needed. You're not thinking about them. You're just thinking about you. That's what we tend to do most of our lives. And we can apply that, also reverse it. Ever been disappointed, angry, mad at yourself on a daily basis? Right? Do you really understand all the pain and trauma and suffering you've gone through? No. But you do something stupid and you think you're like the dumbest person in the world. No, you're amazing. You're incredible. You've gone through so much hell to get to this point. But you do one little dumb thing and you think you're like the worst person in the world. Without really understanding everything that has happened to you your entire life. Dependent origination. Use that when you get angry or miserable at yourself or others. To help you understand, you don't understand the endless causal relationship of each moment. That make sense? Yeah. So in theory, intellectually, it's not that difficult to understand, to comprehend, but to put it into practice, good thing is we get pissed off every day, so we get a lot of opportunities to practice.
Yeah. Every once in a while, you hit one out of the park.
I try. What else? Questions? Yeah.
Anything to say about Mara?
Anything to say about what?
The devil?
Did you say Mara and then the devil?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing?
What do you mean same thing? Are they the same thing?
Yeah.
No. I can't say anything about the devil because I don't know anything about the devil.
Yeah.
I can tell you about Mara though. What do you think Mara is?
King of the mundane world.
Okay, but what does that mean, not from like a textbook? What does that mean in your mind and in your heart? King of the mundane world. What does Mara mean to you?
Temptation itself.
Temptation?
Yeah.
Okay. And when you say temptation, you see that as a bad thing?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So, what about, and I'm going to kind of work around this a little bit, but instead of temptation, what about the word craving and desire? Do you think craving and desire is a bad thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
More difficult. But yeah.
Yeah. So you've read a little bit of Buddhist stuff, and it'll tell you craving and desire leads to suffering. But the Buddha also taught that there's healthy cravings and healthy desires. So coming back to temptations, again, the way we use the word temptation tends to sound very negative. I'll come back to your question in a minute, but I just want to walk you through this.
Yeah.
Thinking about temptation, craving, desire, there are healthy temptations, healthy cravings, healthy desires. What's your name?
Ryan.
Ryan, would you like to suffer less?
Not sure about that.
You're not sure? Okay, well that's fair. Well, let's just say you get to a place in your life where you want to suffer less. The Buddha would say that's a healthy craving. That's a healthy desire. That's a healthy temptation. Okay? What Mara is in Buddhist teachings, you know the life story of the Buddha where he was the prince and then became called the Buddha? Yep? Okay. So Mara is his mind. That's it. In the story where he's challenged by Mara, and Mara begins to... So, for those who don't know, I'm not going to tell the whole life story, but as the Buddha left the life of a prince, roamed around the base of the Himalayan mountains from 29 to age 35. At 35 years old, he sat down under the Bodhi tree and said, I'm not leaving until we figure out why I suffer. He sat down by himself and he said, I'm not moving from this seat. So he sat, as it said, for 21 days under the Bodhi tree and focused on sensation of breath and sitting. And during this time, he was challenged by Mara. Right? The question was about Mara. Mara, in the story, is like a monster that comes out. And Mara begins to rain hail and thunderstorm down on the Buddha. And he's sitting there in meditation and contemplation. And instead of getting up and looking for cover and running from the rain and hail and thunder and all that kind of stuff, he just sits with it. And a king cobra comes up. They were called nagas. At that time, they had underwater shape-shifting serpents called nagas, which, are kind of fun and cool, but I haven't seen one recently. So a naga came up, coiled underneath him, covered him. 7-headed cobra covered him to protect him. Now, if a cobra came at us, even though we're probably advised not to run, I'm guessing, but we'd probably run. In this case, he just sat with it to show us that what we fear could actually protect us if we shift our mind a little bit. So the Buddha realized he could not get him with fear. He began to shoot arrows at him, right? And the Buddha simply puts his hand up, the arrows turn to lotus petals and fall to the ground. Again, not concerned, not disturbed, not fazed at all. The Buddha says, well, I'm going to tempt him with desire. And I'm going to take beautiful women and dance him in front of the Buddha, because this definitely will tempt him. And so he sits there, not moved. They turn to stone, and even desire couldn't pull him out from sitting in this space. So he gets challenged by Mara a number of different ways. At the end, Mara is really frustrated and says, who bears witness to you defeating me? And instead of getting up and yelling at him, he simply touches the earth to show the earth is his witness. In the story, the earth trembled and shook, Mara went away, and at that moment, they say, that's when he was awakened. He was not disturbed, tempted, moved at all by Mara. But I want to point out, Mara is not a real person. Mara doesn't exist. Mara is our mind. Just ask yourself, you ever been in a happy mood one day? And how quickly does that turn to a miserable mood? And then how can that turn back into a good mood? So every day in our mind, when you look at Mara and you look at Nirvana, you look at hell realms, heavenly realms, all these things you'll read about in Buddhism, they're all states of mind, ultimately. So we, in one day, we can be battling Mara and just feel like hell. And in one day, we can also, an hour later, feel like we're in the greatest place in the world. So it's all states of mind. So we are Mara, and we are also the Buddha, fully awakened. Same thing. What else? Yeah.
How does Buddhism deal with guilt?
How does it do with guilt?
Or how does it deal with it?
You're asking a Jewish guy to answer that question? How does it deal with guilt? Let me start by saying this. Often people will ask questions like, how does Buddhism deal with, or what did the Buddhists say about, things like that. So just to put into context, the Buddha lived 2,500 years ago. He taught for 45 years, and in 80 he died. And then what you have is 2,500 years of people translating Buddhist teachings, and different people all over the world practicing and studying pretty different practices and teachings. I know it's repetitive, but so it's important to understand that there's not one like concrete way. It's not like Buddha this, right? There's a lot of interpretations and a lot of representations of practices. So I think when it comes to guilt specifically, my master, when he talked about let me start tying this into forgiveness, right? You ever done anything you wanted forgiveness for? Yeah? And never felt guilty about what you did, and you want forgiveness for it, right? So let's start with forgiveness. What he taught was, when we do things that we shouldn't have done, there are 3 practices that we can put into place. One is to recognize what we did harmed somebody, and it wasn't in line with loving kindness, compassion, general Buddhist teachings, right? So the first thing is to recognize we caused harm that was not in line with the general practice of the teachings, right? The second thing is he taught to apologize sincerely and genuinely, but only if it's relevant to that person, meaning, you're still relatively young, but let's say you broke somebody's heart 30 years ago. And all of a sudden you're all Buddhist and you're like, realizing what you did was really dumb. And you wish you could go back and change it and do something differently. And now you're wanting to apologize. They're probably over it by now. And they don't want to hear from you 30 years later just because you're on your Buddhist path, right? So what he said was, you don't need to contact that person directly and apologize. And sometimes, even if it was recent interactions, right? It might not be safe or healthy to have that exchange. So what he said was, then find somebody, a good friend, whoever it is, and apologize to that person on behalf of what you did to somebody else. But that way you can experience that very genuine apology. And the third piece is to vow to not do the same thing again. So you have the recognition that you were coming from a place of greed, anger, ignorance that caused the harm. You apologize sincerely. And the third one is you vow to not do it again, right? Now, these practices don't necessarily remove guilt. But what it does is it helps us recognize that if we spend our entire lives, and I can only share from personal experience, if we spend our entire lives looking back on people and places and things that we have harmed, and we feel guilty for them, we're going to feel miserable our entire lives. And we will just be stuck in that endless cycle of guilt and shame. We have all caused harm in this room. And we have all done beautiful, wonderful things to people in this room. Right? So guilt, set it down. Right? There's no real question of what does Buddhism say about guilt, but I can tell you from a practice standpoint, guilt doesn't do you any good. It keeps you stuck in the past. Now moving forward, kind of using the 3 practices I talk about and trying to set down guilt doesn't excuse what you've done. It doesn't make it okay. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it good. Right? Just because you apologize doesn't mean that the person you harmed is all of a sudden perfectly happy. No, they're still crushed or destroyed. But it frees us from destroying ourselves. I spent a majority of my life hating myself. A lot of what you're asking about led me into Buddhist practice 20-something years ago. Because I hated myself for the things I did, and I couldn't move past that. And I realized, I got to move on. Make sense? Easier said than done. But the practice of meditation, to kind of close this out, this is where the practice of meditation has been just absolutely life-changing. Because what is meditation helping you do? Stay what? Present. And when we feel guilt and shame and remorse for things we've done, where are we? In the past. When you want to look at things you've done, look at it. I don't suggest or recommend pretending it didn't happen or ignoring it. You know, I often will reflect on things I've done from the past because it motivates me and inspires me to not do the same stupid shit. You know? But the training of the mind to stay present is absolutely critical. So, give yourself a break, you know? And look at it this way. How old are you? Is that, you're not sure?
23.
Okay. I was going to go 27, so it's pretty good. Mustache, you know, gives you a little bit. Hey, you're 23, right? I'm glad I asked, actually, because I was about to move on. Dude, you're 23, and you're here concerned about feeling guilty for things you've done in the past. Beautiful. Congratulations. Thank you. I wish most of us were here at the age of 23, concerned like you are. So use it from this point forward. So when you're 33, you're not looking back and saying, how do I stop, you know, dealing with the guilt from the things I did from 23 to 33? Stop creating more things in your life that you need to feel guilty for. I mean, you're only 23. Like, how bad could it have been, you know? I shouldn't say that. It could have been really bad, but... You know, you'll be all right. Yeah, in the back.
You know, I want to make a comment to what he said. He's 23. I'm going to be 60 in May, and I'm just now realizing that have regrets about stuff I did in the past.
Yeah.
I'm just now, because I started this and stuff's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm starting to realize that I hurt people and stuff. You know, some of the things I did were really bad, but I'm just now realizing that, and I'm going to be 60 in May, so he's 23.
Yeah.
He's pretty good.
Yeah.
You know?
You'll be all right. And you at 60, you'll be all right too, so keep going. Yeah.
I just got to say, at 23, I did things that I was guilty about already.
Say that again?
At 23, I already had done things that I felt guilty about.
Oh, I had him at 3. I mean, I get you. Yeah. But I really want to drive home the fact that moving beyond guilt and shame and all that does not make what we've done okay. It's really important to own that piece of it. To not get all Buddhist-y and be like, well, I'm living in the present moment and everything I've done in the past doesn't matter. You know, no, it matters. You did things that hurt people. That matters. Don't forget that. Actually feel that pain. I didn't go into this, but that's part of that practice is to like really sit with that. Oh my, look how much pain I caused. Do not free yourself from that awareness, but don't spend the rest of your life there. Does that make sense? Because one of the only things that's going to help, I shouldn't say one thing that can really help pull you out of it is to just drive home how important it is to not harm people like that again. And to feel what they felt. What else?
It's about Mara.
Ah,
She's the mind.
Mara's the mind, yes.
Okay. So does she come back and revisit him?
Does she come back?
Well, it's the
sorry.
mind.
Does she come back and oh, you're asking if Mara came back to revisit the Buddha?
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't there. I don't know. No, good question. Like you're wondering, like, so in the story, Mara went away, right? Mara, well, I don't know if she came back. Hang on, right? Mara in the story went away. But what was Mara driven by? Mara was driven, or what was the cause of Mara? The cause of Mara was greed, the second noble truth. Greed, anger, and ignorance. Craving, desire, attachment. So if we remove, by like Friday at noon, if we remove all greed, all anger, all ignorance, if we remove all craving, all desire, all attachment, Mara ceases to exist. So by definition, right, the word Buddha just means awakened, right? So he was just some dude who awakened. So by definition, enlightened beings are beyond craving, desire, attachment, greed, anger, ignorance. Therefore, Mara ceases to exist. Right? Us little folks, we're probably stuck with Mara for a while. Forever, right? And so I think the question, not necessarily the question, but I think one way to look at it, and I'll close with this thought, is to realize that there are aspects of Mara, our mind, that like you said, stuck forever, they're always going to be there. But even to go back to Max, right, his comment earlier about the things you learn with impermanence, same thing with the mind. That Mara in our mind that causes our suffering, the anger, the sadness, the frustration, the guilt, the shame, whatever these things are, those are also impermanent. Those will also change. So you can watch throughout your day, how much is Mara, again, it's just a metaphor, right? How much is our mind destroying us? And how much of our day can we actually be at peace? So just kind of keep an eye on that and realize that when you help people, how do you feel? Good. Right? They all couldn't see you smile, so I just wanted to hear you. Right? When you help people, you feel good. And when you focus on you yourself and you're just stuck on you and you think you're the most important person in the world, how do you feel? Not as good, right? So when you feel Mara coming on, meaning you're stuck in depression, sadness, anger, resentment, guilt, shame, whatever it is, go help people. And Mara will, at least sit down for a while. So Mara's always going to be there, but, you don't need to serve Mara tea and hang out so much. Yeah. You've heard that one before, huh? The thoughts, you don't need to serve them tea. They're just thoughts. Mara is just a thought. That's all it is. And poof, can be gone. Just like the clouds. So I'm going to close on that. We'll join palms. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May this merit be transferred to Mark Miller and Stephen Hendricks in their time of rebirth. And to Billy and Eric during their time of suffering. May they all be healthy and free from suffering. And to all those in LA who suffer now from the fires, may they be at peace and free from suffering. All right, before you all head out, our Dharma Bum host Molly has a few announcements for us.
Hi everyone. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 18 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They are simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night, we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone with addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 4:30. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We have a lending library, and if you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it, then bring it back whenever you're done with it. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. If a few people could stay and close and latch the windows, that would be helpful. I think they're all closed. So thank you for being here. We wish you